noble Clydesdale, magnificent among God's creations, known for power, grace, and beauty, bearer of style and poise that's evident in only the truest of bloodlines. Unmistakable, with its grand galloping gait and fetlock feathers flying. Descendant of the great Flemish horse, first bred on the bonny banks of the River Clyde in Scotland. Bred bold and strong to carry the weight of men in shining armor across the misty moors and into battle. The Clydesdale, king among horses, and loyal servant to kings and working men. Their hooves pound through the ages and into legend.
Thank you, Tom. Hi, I'm Darren McGavin. You've been watching a scene that was commonplace as recently as, 70, 80 years ago. An activity that took place daily in cities throughout this nation. One man, two horses, delivering beer to the local taverns. Today, of course, delivery techniques have certainly changed, but not this symbol. The Clydesdale. This mighty horse, this gentle giant. For 50 years, they have remained an elegant tribute to bygone days. Come with me and we'll discover just how these magnificent animals became all the king's horses.
It was a long journey from the rolling pastures of the Clydesdale's native Scotland to the cobblestones of our early American cities. Imported to this country just before the war between the states, Clydesdales quickly became a part of the American scene. In the fields, they were worth their weight in gold. But at the turn of the century, the horseless carriage, a noisy, fuming, infernal machine, took over the streets of this country. And the days of draft horses plodding along urban thoroughfares went the way of knights in armor.
But one lingering vestige of equine dependence was with the farmer in his fields. Back-breaking labor at the mercy of Mother Nature, he was burdened with the responsibility of satisfying the appetites of the assembly line workers and their families.
So the farmer, very wisely, relied on the dependability and strength of these great horses. Together, they produced the basis of a popular American tradition: 3 meals a day. In 1919, America embarked on what was known as the Noble Experiment, Prohibition. 1933, it's repealed. And August A. Bush, Jr. put his brewery back on the map with an enterprising idea, an all-American phenomena, a marriage of the majestic Clydesdales with the world-renowned king of beers. He told his father he'd bought a new car, but surprised him with the first Clydesdale hitch.
And I had the 2 teams set up behind the Bevo plant. And when they had the right signal, and Daddy was down to look at a car and was raising heck with me because he said it's premature to go buy one after we just got legalized, and we're going through a hard time until we get started. So we turned around, and I had the 2 teams come down, and it was the most gratifying thing I think I've ever done in my life.
The response was overwhelming. Crowds went wild, and an American tradition was born. Clydesdale, destined for the famous 8-horse hitch, has to measure up to certain standards. Weight between 1,900 and 2,300 pounds. That's a ton of horse. Color, bay with a white blaze and white fetlocks. Those distinctive clumps of hair at their feet are called feathers. Height, about 18 hands or about 6 feet at the shoulder. They're actually about 8 feet tall from head to hoof. Breeding a horse like this is a full-time job. The Budweiser Clydesdales are bred here on Grant's Farm just outside St. Louis. It's called Grant's Farm because President Ulysses S. Grant lived on and worked this land before the war between the states. These are the prize breeding stallions. You can trace their bloodlines over the centuries. You might call this the maternity ward. These mares in foal will give birth to a new crop of Clydesdales in the spring. Only a few of these colts will meet the high standards of the hitch. The first step in a yearling's education isn't always well received. So, as he's learning to be led, the rope around his rump encourages him to step out. At the age of 2, they're fitted for their first harness and then turned out in the paddock for a little private meditation. The bit in his mouth takes a little getting used to. The next step, feel the weight and learn to work together. The stone sled offers enough resistance in case the youngster tries to bolt, and the quiet, experienced mare is a settling influence. And his education continues. At 3 years old, judgment is passed. If the horse has the temperament, the strength, and the style, he may someday know the honor of being a part of the 8-horse hitch. Great care goes into breeding a champion like this. Occasionally, new strains of the Scottish Clydesdales are reintroduced to their American cousins. Scotland, the original birthplace of the Clydesdale breed, is still like a storybook land. Here, the mighty Clydesdale was put to the task of planting, plowing, and reaping the harvest. The stones turned up were stacked for fences and boundaries that still crisscross the countryside. A representative from Grant's Farm is here in search of those horses that represent the best of their breed. He looks for fresh foals and stallions to take back to the States. One visit, the farm of Jim Pickens in Kilcoobry on the southwest coast. These longtime friends have plenty of gossip to catch up on, but is put aside for the moment as horse trading begins. He measures, checks, assesses, and analyzes. But like any savvy horse trader, he shows no reaction.
Enterprise was a Concord. The mother, she was Johnson Sensation Sensation. You know, the hair's always been good in the whole side.
The trading's done, and it's on to another farm. Hugh Ramsey and his matched pair of blue roan Clydesdales take him on an inspection of his latest stock. Ramsey proudly boasts that he's never sat atop a tractor. In the northeast, near Cooper in Fife, the entire Brewster clan parades their best stock for the visiting American in the finest Scottish tradition. Ah, now here's a champion. Strong legs, good shoulders, a fine head. This horse meets the standards and may have a trip to St. Louis in its future. If she's that lucky, this is her destination. In St. Louis, this is the home of the famous 8-horse hitch. Originally the private stable of Adolphus Busch, this building on the grounds of the Anheuser-Busch Brewery is now an official national landmark. The living is lavish, as befits a horse of this stature. And always on hand are the Dalmatians, the Clydesdale's constant companions.
This is Missy. She's been with this wagon for 7 years and about 200,000 miles. This wagon, all 3.5 tons of it, is a real classic. Built in 1905 by Studebaker, it was originally designed as a meat wagon. And then, around 1910, it was converted by the brewery to a more permanent use, a beer wagon.
The Clydesdales are on the road for most of the year, but on the occasions when the Clydesdales are home, their grooms exercise them in the paddock behind the stables. Each champion has his own set of harness, handmade from imported leather, silver, and brass. Weight, 130 pounds. Worth more than $5,000 apiece. Just like the shine of the harness, great time and care goes into the grooming of the Clydesdales. Full dress when meeting the public is mandatory. The manes are braided with colorful lengths of cloth, flowers attached every few inches, and the tail is braided and knotted. A bow adds the finishing touch. Then it's into the harness and all the fittings of a well-dressed horse. Now he becomes part of the team, the 8-horse hitch. As the driver snaps the reins, these horses know they are part of the legend, and they high-step every foot of the way. Of course, the Clydesdales are in great demand by the public, and when they hit the road, it's to the tune of 60,000 miles a year. The Clydesdales, the wagon, crew, and equipment travel in a trio of tractor-trailers. The horses' trucks have a special suspension system giving them a smoother ride than the drivers in the cab. From coast to coast, these horses have marched down just about every main street in America, and they're invited back again and again. They make more than 300 appearances a year, but if every request could be filled, they'd appear more than 10 times as often. The Clydesdales travel with their own portable stables, right down to the nameplates on the stalls. Nothing seems to delight the horses and crew as much as the wide-eyed fascination that comes from children. At first touch, is remembered forever. No matter where they go, the reaction is always the same. Thanksgiving Day in New York City. Another stop at the Colorado State Fair in Pueblo. This is the world's richest thoroughbred race, the Budweiser Million at Arlington Park in Chicago, and the 8-horse hitch is here to perform. Here at the Champion of Champions quarter horse race, they show off their famous docking maneuvers. The left-right movement of the team really gets the leather flying through the driver's hands. It's Veterans Day at Nellis Air Force Base in Las Vegas, and the hitch is hard at work. It's an interesting sight as the descendants of medieval war horses review the men and machines of America's first line of defense. And there was this especially proud moment as the Clydesdales entered Busch Stadium carrying August Busch Jr. to his box for the opening game of the 1982 World Series. Joining his son August III, they stayed on hand for an eventual World Series championship by the St. Louis Cardinals. Meanwhile, requests for the world-famous Clydesdales keep pouring in. Who knows, their next stop may be in your hometown. And as you watch them marching down your street, your heart may stir at the sight of the majestic Clydesdales and the thought of their proud heritage. So this, then, is the legend of the Clydesdale. From the banks of the River Clyde in bonny old Scotland to the smiling faces of children watching a parade, these noble steeds have worked hard for man and brought joy to millions since this breed's birth long centuries ago. And the Clydesdale will go on forever through legend and time.